Can I record? This means it is recording then.
Yeah, so I know it's only a few of us this morning. We were expecting a lot more, clearly you can tell by the packet. But in the interest of time and out of respect for you being here, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Just so you're aware, we are gonna record it, so it can become a resource that we'll hopefully share. So if you don't want to share, personal details, please don't, because it is getting recorded. How do you feel about that?
No, let me tilt it even up a little bit. They'll mostly see our presentation. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is public space, so if someone else came in here, they would have heard whatever story we would have shared, so think of it in that way. And we do have some helpers out there if you want her to be with someone, something like that. Yeah, and see, this is why we use screens, so they're useful, right? Moments like that. But yes, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So welcome, those of you who haven't been here before. This is the Fairview Family Resource Center. This is our new space. We recently moved in. Family Resource Center is up here, and the Counseling Center is on the second floor. And this is all part of the department. We have a third agency, which is Caribbean Haven, which you'll find in Breakers, and that's more inpatient oriented. But today, it's us. My name is Diaz. I'm the program coordinator here at the Family Resource Center. And I'm joined by Dr. Stephanie Edwards. She's an educational psychologist with the Department of Educational Education Services. And then I have the lovely Deshane Lopez. She represents the Counseling Center. She's a therapist, loads of experience. She led her own practice back in Belize, I understand. And so we have great experts here today to talk about a few things that is related to screen time and screen use. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start with Dr. Edwards. You come on up. And let me make sure yours is being shared. Where did it go? Here it is. There you go. And then I don't know if anyone wants to know paper and pens, but it's here. Yeah. Good morning. It's kind of nice that it's a small group, so we can get down, exchange ideas. We discuss things as we like to. So, as Ms. Anne-Marie said, I'm an educational psychologist with the Department of Education. I also have part-time coverage at Health Services Authority for clinical psychologists there too. So I keep myself busy. I suppose that's what we can agree to. So I'm hoping to give an overview of child development and its interaction with screen time, benefits, risks, broad recommendations in terms of managing screen time appropriately. Time is relatively short, so I won't get too much into nitty-gritty, but I'm known for getting carried away when I get excited when I'm talking, so just bear with me if that happens. So I'm going to age myself now off the bat, right? Anybody recognize any of these things? Oh, very good. I don't feel We're all aged.
all right. So we see our original Nintendo, beeper. I mean, just looking at that handheld. Wait. This in particular, I was very fond of when I was younger. Remember the knob, turning the knob, and then just move it just right. And it really is interesting to look at these things. Even look at the phone. I mean, I couldn't find something with a rotary dial or would have gone with it. But the Walkman, when I got the Walkman, I thought the coolest person,
the cassettes, kids nowadays, they will never understand. The despair and hopelessness when the whole thing is reeled out and you think, oh, it's over. It's over. Right? So, of course, we graduated to like the iPod and things over time, but all of this to say we've a long, long way with technology. I think the last 15, 20 years, probably, it's just been at warp speed. I think it was sort of bit by bit, and then all of a sudden there was this explosion. So, I mean, I don't even think they make computers with CD drives anymore. Maybe have a special order it. I have no idea, but it's a whole problem. So, now that we've aged ourselves appropriately, we can move on. So, when we're talking about child development, right, we're looking at the broad domains. We're looking at physical, social, cognitive, and emotional. So those are the sort of four main categories that we look at when we talk about child development. So, anybody tell me, physical development, what do you think that includes?
Weight.
Pardon?
Weight growth, the way to grow in height.
Okay, so more physical characteristics, okay. Oh, I thought you were looking at that. Anybody else? Well, that would come under social, but that was, yeah, good. You're jumping ahead of me. Yeah. Brain development, so that's under cognitive. Yeah. So physical could also include motor skills, fine motor skills. That's like writing, buttoning, fastening, gross motor skills, running, jumping, skipping, climbing stairs, that kind of thing. So, yeah, correct. Yes. Or off the bridge, depending on where we are. Right? So that's physical. Social. You had said how you interact with others. What else might fall under social? Making friends. Big one is attachment. How do you attach to your primary caregiver? Is that a secure attachment? Is it an anxious attachment? Here I go, string already. But the attachment, really, really important. A secure attachment between an infant and the parent figure, usually mom, but doesn't have to be mom, really determines a lot in terms of how that child learns to manage emotions, manage stress, self-regulate, interact with others. That forms the basis of the interactions with others. So that's part of the social as well. We want a strong, stable, secure attachment. Cognitive. You had mentioned cognitive. Brain development is what you said. Yep. So more specifically, we're looking at things like learning, attention, memory, problem solving, all these skills that a child will need to be successful in school, but also just functioning in the environment, right? We need, that cognitive development to be as on par as possible. And then emotional. Anybody? Emotional feelings. Yeah, very good. What else? Identifying emotions, yeah.
The difference between upset, sad, happy.
And then managing those feelings when they come up, right? So are we throwing furniture? Are we, beating up people? Or I'm really angry and I'm going to take 5 minutes. All of that comes under, emotional functioning. Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I scared? All of that. So these are the broad domains that we talk about. So when we talk about child development, right, we want our kids to get the skills that they need to function, eventually independently, if possible. Typically, children, like we just saw, they'll show their interest, being curious and exploring and checking things out. And, some kids might even just walk up to random people, start talking to them. That's what they do. They interact with the environment. What the research shows is that, kind of unstructured playtime has a lot of value, especially for younger children. Play is sort of the main mode of learning at that age. It's not to say electronic media doesn't have some benefits, but unstructured play is really helpful, and structured play as well. I suppose for children younger than 2, that play-based learning is most important. They're going to get much more from that than from a screen. No, this is not to say I don't see utility in use of technology and supplementing with technology, but especially below age 2, we want to try to focus most on interactions, real life, experiences, high levels of stimulation. That's what's going to get children sort of driving towards meeting their milestones. We want as much language stimulation, as much problem solving interactions, exploring outside, exploring inside, all these different experiences will come together to help that brain development and overall development. So when we have kids, kind of interacting with parents, grandparents, auntie, uncle, cousins, anybody, it makes it that much more enriching for that child's experience. So when we talk about screen time, we sort of have 2 factions. We have one side that says, oh, technology is it. We can't hide away from it. And then we have another set that might say, oh no, screen time is all bad, it's terrible. But I think it's both. I think it's both. Like anything that we do, moderation is key. We want to avoid excessive use of technology, but really we can't hide from it. This is where we are now in terms of, the global, development. If we were to tell our children, nope, can't use technology at all, then we'd be doing them a disservice, right? I think that's something to also keep in mind. So we have to balance it. So some of the worries that some people have, addiction. It really actually is addictive. There is a relatively new diagnosis, gaming addiction. So it's a thing. Definitely, I think I have a student who stopped showering, stopped sleeping, just nothing mattered. What the game. Inappropriate content, of course, that's clear. We don't want children exposed to things that are not for them. Online predators, that's becoming more problematic locally, I would say. I'm aware of some, issues with EK and, people planning to meet up and then it's not quite what it's supposed to be.
Snapchat is being used to social media.
Yeah, I guess Instagram too,
Yeah.
all of those things. Online bullying. This is something that we really have to work hard with in the high schools in particular. There's a lot of kind of targeted, social media interactions. They'll make fake pages just to, antagonize another student. They'll post pictures and they might modify the pictures to look a particular way, and it's all meant to humiliate or degrade somebody else. We definitely have issues with that. And the online bullying, it is different from in-person or traditional bullying then, because there's this sense that everybody in the whole world is seeing what's happening. And that can feel so overwhelming and devastating. The response to it tends to be much bigger and more severe because, it just feels like the whole world is watching versus the 20 kids who might see you, in a fight or get thrown in the garbage can. I don't know, whatever. It just feels that much worse. The violence, of course, with the video games, it's worrying how many young children are playing, these really, really violent games, GTA and all these things are killing people and there's blood splatter everywhere. It's really graphic, really, really graphic. And they can tell you all about it. They don't seem phased, but is that content what we want them, kind of just absorbing all the time, this constant exposure to violence and predatory behavior, victimizing others. That's not helpful. Oh boy, the challenges and the trends, that's a more recent thing, I guess. All these TikTok challenges, the one chip challenge. I think somebody died just recently with that one. The cinnamon one, and oh man. And just looking at it, I just wonder why would you think this is a good idea? What part of this seems sensible? But then if everybody else is doing it and it's all fun, haha, I want to get views and I want to get likes, I'm going to do it too. So we went from trends with more socially helpful trends, so like the ice bucket challenge for ALS and that kind of thing, and then some people veered off into some really, really strange things that seems to get people hurt more often than we'd like. And then the fear of getting too much access at an early age. I would qualify that with too much unsupervised access or uncontrolled access at an early age. Now, when we talk about negative effects, potential negative effects, right? So we're going to go through each of those developmental domains. Physical health. Now, when we have children who, I'm talking about excessive technology use now, and they're just sitting all day, most of the day, they're not moving around, they're not outside playing, they're not running, they're not doing any of that. That sedentary lifestyle, all they're doing is gaming or on the technology and hopefully showering. That's and maybe going to school and that's when they get a break. But so all the sitting, it's and not only obesity, but just overall muscle development and bone health, all of those things are affected by a sedentary lifestyle. You'll remember I mentioned the development of fine motor skills and gross motor skills. If we have younger children sitting all day or lying down all day, then all these large muscles are not getting developed. The running, the jumping, all of those things are not happening. So then that's going to mean possible delays in those skills. So we might have children turning up for school who struggled climbing stairs or going downstairs. Their ability to just alternate feet going up or down, not there, So again, that's just a result of underdevelopment of those larger muscle groups. Sleep. The sleep is a big problem across the whole development. We have children who are showing up to school, young ones, tweens, older ones. They're exhausted. They're sleeping in class. They can't focus. They're miserable. Why? They've not slept. And what we find then is that the learning is going to be affected. If your brain is not rested, then how are you reasonably doing any sort of learning, right? So I find, again, this comes with, unsupervised or uncontrolled access to the technology. Kids are up all night with the phone or iPad under the blanket, and parents don't know. I don't think parents just say, "Oh, do whatever you want and just carry on." I choose not to believe that. I think children are very good at finding ways to do what they want to do. So yeah, we find children turning up with a host of problems because of insufficient sleep. This one I thought was interesting too. So when you're staring at a screen or concentrating for a long period, you don't blink as often. And so your eyes might become really irritated, they might become dry and red, and over time, if that continues, then you're at risk of further, eye problems because of having chronic dry eyes. But that is something I think that's also important to know, even for us as adults who, if we sit on a laptop all day or computer, it's important to, like, every 20 minutes, take a break, look away, so you eyes can sort of lubricate themselves and then go back again. The impact on the social skills. This one again, across the whole developmental span. So for younger children, they're not getting that sort of face-to-face interaction as they should. Again, I'm going back to this is excessive screen time, right? It's a very passive interaction. It's just, I'm just watching. There's nobody talking back. There's nobody commenting. There's no feedback. It's just, oh, I'm looking at these things and it's fun and it's exciting and it's colorful and it's moving. But socially, the child is not getting anything from that. What we find also is a child watching a screen, younger and middle childhood, it's more difficult to interpret body language, emotional cues. I think we as adults would have experienced some of that in the COVID period where everything was online, right? And I'm gonna speak for myself now. I found I was exhausted after meetings on Zoom because I had to focus that much harder on what was happening in each box and each person's, reaction, and trying to, manage an interaction online. That gets really difficult, and I'm an adult. I feel like I have good enough observational skills and people skills. So that was hard for me. A child who does not have those skills developed yet, that's just, they're missing out on a whole piece of skill development there because they don't get to learn how to interpret those nonverbal cues. Online drama. We just kind of touched on that with the bullying. So I find children, tweens, teens, a lot of them give themselves permission to get particularly vile and vicious and cutting because they are protected by this level of anonymity that, technology affords. Oh, they'll never know it's me, so I can just say whatever I want, I can do whatever I want. And that comes with a lot of consequences, negative consequences for whoever is on the receiving end of that. So that anonymity sort of emboldens it, some of those bullying behaviors. And it's that disinhibition that just, it fuels a lot of aggression after, because then when they get in person and this child who is victimized is so upset about what has happened and just lash out, on everybody. And we can understand, why that would happen. What I'm also seeing is, again, across the span, children who do most of their socializing or interactions online, they struggle in person. So we'll have children who, let's say they're playing, what's the game? Roblox and all them things. Where it's like the online, clearly I need to catch up. But I think, on the ones that are online, where you're live interacting with other people, right? And you hear them in the room, bro, yeah, I'm lagging, yeah, God. What is this? And you see that child try to interact with those same children that they're playing with, don't know how to do it. You say to this one, oh, okay, have you invited your friends over? Maybe you all could, meet up at somebody's house. You could go to Commander Bay. Have you done that? No. How would you do that? But these are people you see at school. These are people you are interacting with online. What's the problem? I don't know. Could you go up to Johnny and say, hey, let's do. That's weird. That's awkward. That's nothing. Oh man. So unless they have that sort of buffer of the online interaction, it's like the social skills just disintegrate, or well, maybe they weren't there to begin with. So again, they're not interacting in a way that's helpful for them in multiple domains. Are they fine when they're running up and down on this Roblox thing or Fortnite? Sure, they're having a great time. They're disturbing the whole house. But then outside of that, how is the social function? It's very much delayed. So we see children who almost they want to look like they have some autistic features, but that's just not it. They just haven't learned. You know, especially those who might be only children or they might have some social anxiety at baseline and they don't really interact, you know, readily. We see a lot of problems and delays there. Cognitive. Now, I think this is a really important one, especially for infants, toddlers, sort of up to middle childhood. Sometimes we can see delays in the cognitive development, particularly language. Anybody have a guess as to why that? Well, we have language delays if the child is autistic, but that would be separate from the technology. So let's think about how we learn language. How do we learn to speak? How do we pick up any sort of language? And I'm talking verbal and non-verbal now, but let's just stick with verbal. The child has to listen. The child has to internalize what's being said. Specific sounds at first is what's important, and then we move on to whole words and sentences and so on. There's a lot of it that's also mirroring or mimicking the facial expressions, the mouth movements, tongue placement, all of those things. When you're teaching a child how to speak, they say mama, and it's very exaggerated, and that's how children pick up language. A lot to do with the interaction. We'll go back to the example of the child who is, yes, you know, very much engaged with the technology, but there's no interaction. And even if there is interaction, it's that much harder to pick up on all those finer, you know, nonverbals and kind of picking up all those cues. So that child is set back now because they don't have enough of that face-to-face, person-to-person interaction to really develop those language skills. So again, they look delayed, like something is terribly wrong, but they are delayed, but it's not because of a, you know, organic problem with the brain. It's a matter of stimulation. Ultimately, it's a lack of stimulation that will lead to that language delay. The research is also showing there's impact on the attention span and academic performance. So as far as the attention span goes, what tends to happen is with most things that are technology-based, very stimulating, very colorful. The pictures change, boom, 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 very fast. It's music, it's colors, it's, woo, I get tired sometimes, like Cocomelon, I find very overwhelming. Right? So if a child's brain gets accustomed to that, or it's another word I'm looking for, but it's conditioned to you know, kind of expect that level of stimulation and input, and you know, it's almost overloading this kind of prefrontal cortex here where learning takes place. When a child is not interacting with the technology, that child looks very bored, that child looks listless, that child can lack motivation, because in relation to whatever is on the screen, real life is terrible. We are walking in slow motion. It's gonna feel like, oh, nothing is happening. I'm just seeing trees. Oh, nobody's talking. There's no music. There's no loud blaring anything. It's the same image going. When your brain is conditioned to expect so much more, you're gonna try and seek out that so much more. Great stimulation, all right? So we're gonna see some amount of restlessness and, you know, just seeking out stimulation so that that brain can get the dopamine hits. Dopamine is related to like with pleasure, reward center in your brain. Oh, I need to feel happy. Oh, I need this stuff. I hate to say it, but it's almost like a drug hit. You know, you feel good, and when the levels come back down, I need to find it, need to find it, need to find it. And that is also what leads to the addiction. And it's this need for this dopamine, and they're not getting it from anywhere else. There's nothing else that is that motivating and satisfying. You know, but those of us who are older, you know, maybe getting a good grade was satisfying. Maybe learning something was satisfying. Running a race and coming, you know, first, that compared to all of what is happening on the game and on it does not compare. So what does that mean for them, you know, long term in terms of cognitive development? You know, less time is spent doing homework, learning. You're just not interested. And it's not that they can't do it, it's just that their brains now are not cooperating with them to actually engage. And then the emotional side of it. There's attention piece, but also increased risk for anxiety and depression. One, if we're not interacting, then we're not getting that stable attachment, that secure attachment, right? That's the basis of positive emotional functioning. So if I'm only interacting with my device, then my attachment with my parent is going to be affected. Same goes if the parent is constantly on the device, that attachment with the child is going to be affected, right? So that definitely works both ways. I think the online, you know, era has really created lots of opportunities for people to interact and for subgroups and subcultures to get together, and that's wonderful. But I think there is also a level of viciousness to some of it, particularly in the gaming community. You know, when children are playing with strangers, the way they speak to each other is mortifying sometimes. You know, oh, you're a simp, you're a noob, go kill yourself. You made our team. It's your fault we did this. It's your and I don't know if you've ever seen gaming rage, where they just start mashing up everything and throw the game and the controller is gone or the iPad is, and the level of emotionality that comes with that, intense emotions. And this is what can happen when that's where children are getting all of their, you know, inputs and satisfaction and esteem. And when it's all concentrated in just that one area, it becomes very, very difficult. And so over time, we can get anxiety and depression creeping in because they don't have any other outlets or sources of esteem. And then again, the potential for addiction. So, you know, seeing major tantrums when it's time to, you know, let go of the phone or let go of the game, or waking up in the middle of the night, sneaking into parents' room to try and find the device. You know, they go to lengths because ultimately it becomes an addiction. So we've had children where we just have to put them off cold turkey, nothing, not even a school laptop, nothing, until we can work on using the technology more responsibly. There are benefits. I just spent a long time talking about all the things that could possibly, well, not all, but many of the things that could potentially go wrong. But there are high quality programs, high quality, you know, shows and documentaries, and, you know, depending on the age, there are things that can absolutely supplement, you know, what we do in person with development. So I think one that's really popular now for infants and toddlers is Miss Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
And all they seem to, but I guess how Miss Rachel does her thing, it encourages interaction. Can you say, Mama? And then there's a pause, and she's like, come on, your turn. And that, you know, so there is that turn taking, there is that somewhat of an interactive piece to it. But again, I think if parents or guardians, carers, whoever can be involved while the technology use is happening, that's more beneficial. We've really seen an explosion in the use of technology in education. We see how it really can drive motivation. We see You know, I can think of a group of children, they love like, what is it, Kahoot and, you know, all these different ways of learning and quizzing. It's not just flashcards anymore. Oh, I'm going to spin the wheel and it, you know, so it makes things more exciting. And some children get content more readily from those formats versus, you know, just a book with words and, you know, nothing else. And we do see schools are using the technology a lot more. So Teams, Google Classroom, all these other things, they are utilizing it, I think, in a helpful way. But again, I'm going back to excessive screen time. I'm not saying just screen time full stop, but excessive, we want to avoid that. So the American Pediatric Association, though, so they have some guidelines. So they say less than 2, their recommendation is no screen time. No. Then from 2 to 5, you know, we're looking at like an hour, maybe 2 hours, you know, of high quality content, right? High quality. So educational things, you can watch together, you can comment on it, you can guide the understanding of it. It's not just a child alone necessarily with the device. And then 6 and older, there are no, you know, strict, you know, hard lines on the recommendations, but definitely we want to moderate so that sleep, activity, and, you know, anything else that's essential to development doesn't get impacted. So I think I said this early on, moderation. We want to balance. Yes, use your screens, but get them outside, get them doing things, get them interacting with other people. The screen shouldn't be, you know, the only sort of input. So instead of a child just swiping and pushing, can we do things together? Parental controls, you mentioned that earlier before we started. The child is using technology, can you be close by? Because even sometimes with the parental controls, I'm telling you, children are good. They're good at bypassing things, they're good at undoing certain, you know, restrictions and limitations. I have a parent who has some kind of thing where the child earns minutes on the Wi-Fi, and somehow that child figured out a way to increase the minutes. Not sure. Know what the children are doing. Know what they're doing. You know, I have younger children, 4, 5-year-old children who they have, you know, they're on YouTube, and then they start swiping and one thing leads to the next, and then you're down some rabbit hole of horror and, you know, people being killed, and, you know, this child ended up presenting with what looked like massive psychiatric problems, but she was just saturated with this Amanda something or other character, like, so yeah, we just want to be sure we know what they're looking at and discuss, again, interact, be present, use that technology to foster the attachment. It's not just you're over there doing your thing and I'm over here doing my thing. No, we're doing this together as much as possible. Doesn't mean a child can't spend some time, but oh gosh, everybody needs a break, everybody needs a break, and the technology is helpful, but as much as you can keep it interact. So don't worry, it's my last slide. So what would I think of next? So we have seen technology, like I said, just absolutely explode. I have no idea where we're going. This AI thing is interesting. I'll leave it at that for now. I have many thoughts, but the fact is the technology is going and we're kind of gonna have to go with it. Part of the difficulty is that the research can't keep up with the rate at which the technology is advancing. So in some ways we're shooting in the dark, and in some ways we're using research that we have to inform future things. So I think we'll just have to stay on top of it and use good judgment. And this is something that I think we'll always have to go back to decide, all right, are we doing this in the most helpful? And
thank you, Dr. Edward. So let's open it up to any questions you might have. I know, I mean, it was all focused on development. And as what I think some of you have already started to look at the packets in front of you. when we get to my part, we will take you through the step by step. Because obviously, this is wonderful to know. These are tools in your toolbox, but then how do you practically make this work in the home? And so obviously our work is primarily with parents. We understand many of us are parents ourselves. So we want to take you through that step by step and not leave you to figure it all out. Yeah.
So we need practical.
Yeah.
This
So we'll
is
get
what
to
to
that.
do.
Yeah. Any questions for Dr. Edward? We're gonna have Miss Deshane Lopez come up and talk about, take us further through the brain and all of that. So any questions for Dr. Edward? We'll have time, I'm sure, at the end too. If anything pops up, feel free to write it down. Yeah? So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Edward. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll bring up Miss Deshane. Please come on up. And I know you're continuing the conversation. I'm very excited to see. I love seeing your slide. How cute it is. Oh, yeah, there we go.
I think I showed my age at the side.
Is that the kind of game?
So we grew up in these type of things
Yeah.
as well, right? So now we're just transitioning in terms of how does screen time actually impact the brain? How does that affect children at home and at school? And then we're talking about bridging the gap. I think Dr. Edwards started off really great in terms of talking about excessiveness. That's really where the concern is. So I'm gonna start off by who I am. I'm gonna first off say that I'm a mother, 4-year-old. And so I was between that space of knowing what I know for research and being a new mom and struggling in terms of, I know what the research says about screen time, and like, but I need some free time.
Yeah.
So where was And so I wanted to be able to talk from that lens of a professional as well as a parent, because it really is hard when we know the stuff, but on the ground floor, it's like, what do I really do? Right? For me, my plan was to not have my child utilize any gadget till age of 5. I failed on that. I failed at that tremendously. But I reached at least to age 3.
Oh, wow.
And that was because I was forced into it. His grandmother got him a tablet. His daycare required that they had gadgets because he would fight the children who had, and he didn't have any, right? So again, we can't exclude them from not having gadgets because then that actually impact them socially as well in other environments that require that they use gadgets. So he really had to know how to use the gadgets. I'm also trained as a psychologist. And so it was testing, these behaviors. There were so many different things that really occurred. And so I wanted to be able to bridge that list as well and also talk a little bit about some teenagers that I've experienced in terms of how it has benefited them. So it's like, I could see the negative, I could be in between, but I could see how it's benefit for teenagers, especially persons who are autistic, and how the internet helped them in the social realm. So screen time on the brain. So one of the major areas that it really impacts is attention, focus, and decision making. So the prefrontal cortex is where we have a developing brain. And those are the areas that get impacted the most because we're stimulated by the games, the colors, the technology, the jumping, the songs, all of those things coming together, it really impacts. So then we have attention, focus, and decision making. And as we hear that, what comes to mind all the time, parents will come in is, I think my child has ADHD. Right? The child is 4, and I think my child has ADHD. We generally don't try to diagnose a child until after the age of 7, because some of those things are typical. But when we have children engaged in screen time a lot earlier and consistently, and not having that engagement with it, then we start to see these a lot more at an earlier stage. So they start to have poor impulse control. Now, typically younger children have poor impulse control, but as they get older, we expect that by age 5, that would be a little bit more regulated. But if they have excessive screen time, that becomes even harder. So wait becomes like, I can't wait. They'll respond automatically, right? And that becomes the style. They need instant gratification. So that also means that anything that has to delay, to wait, cause them even more frustration. So we see more behavioral issues, we have more concerns in terms of they have more meltdowns, tantrums, particularly tantrums in terms of I can't wait now, like I need it now, right? So they start to have weaker brain connections in terms of daily use, really impact the frontal striatal pathway. And that is the part that works with our impulse control and decision making. So again, they are forced into the screen, and when they come out, it's hard to get them to be able to do anything else. So it doesn't always translate, right? So even with educational components, right? Because sometimes we thought negative, a lot of the negative component for healing, but even with the academic stuff, if they're only in that and there's not translating into everyday life, it's also a challenge, right? Because sometimes parents say, well, it's a lot of educational stuff, but is there a connection in terms of what's happening in that world and what's happening in our world, right? So we need to be able to cross over that they could actually practice the stuff that they're learning as well. So like I mentioned, decision making, Dr. Edwards was gave a detailed explanation in terms of the emotional component, responding to their environment, how that becomes very impactful. So the part of the brain it creates a habitual behavior, and that affects the dorsal striatum, which is the part of the brain that involves forming habits. And that's why it could become addictive, right? Because they're spending so much of that time just seeking the screen, and what's happening on the screen stimulates us. But sometimes for a while, like, we need a pause. For us as adults, don't we sometimes just put down the phone and like, okay, I just need a break from it. So imagine toddlers, teenagers, it's like so much for them. We could put it down. My son at night, I could see sometimes he is sleeping and he is like, I want to watch one more. He'll say 4 minutes, mom, 4 more minutes. And so I would have to actually turn off the for him, and he go to sleep automatically, right? And so if we leave them, that one more, another, and another. So we have to be able to create a schedule that we know, okay, this will be the time, and taking it off, removing that access from it helps because they know how to ask for what they want. They have really tricky ways to come up with it. I love you, mom. I would just want one more thing. Or they're very strategic sometimes. So they still have some creativity in terms of how can they get a little bit more time. And he can't read, but he could maneuver the phone really well. And even like Dr. Edwards said with the parental control and stuff, how did that come up, right? And then sometimes if you access one YouTube channel, then it leads you to something else. And now they're using characters that look childlike to teach very aggressive stuff as well, right? So we have to really be careful in terms of how do they utilize that. So now we don't use YouTube if it's not on the TV, we don't want it, right? Because we have to be able to figure out what type of content they have. And again, sometimes if you just look at it, it looks, oh, it's cartoon, it's animation. But when you hear it, and he knows how to lower the volume so that to make sure that I don't hear, right? So that he could just be watching. So again, they're very creative. So we have to also be a little one step ahead. Like, okay, if I'm not hearing, what is he looking at? So at school, what would that look like? So you may hear from teachers that the child may struggle with attention, right? So they have difficulty paying attention, completing tasks, they get distracted very easily. Following rules may be a thing. They might have a hard time adhering to classroom rules. Remember in the classroom, we're required to sit quietly, we're required to raise our hands. Remember I said that they have difficulties then in terms of waiting, right? Brain is flipping all the time to wait, to take turn, all of that good classroom management for them is like, so we have a lot more tantrums. So you may get calls from school, you need to go for your child may need to do some therapy. There's so many different things because they're seeing that it's harder for them to be able to relate within the classroom setting. So they may have poor impulse control, again, talking out of turn, not waiting. That could also impact social as well. Because if they become the child that teacher always have to call upon, their peers may not want to engage with them because the class may no break probably for anyone, or they have to do additional work. So their peers start to withdraw from them. They may not want to engage with them. They may also not feel a part of the classroom. They may feel targeted. So it also impacts them in terms of their social and emotional functioning as well. Their social interactions. They may actually have trouble completing assignments, right? Because it's not stimulating. Could be in terms of procrastination, right? Like procrastination give a surge of energy as well. So they may not do the work, or they may start it, or maybe boring. We hear that a lot. Like, what do you know boring? Like, you're like, Mom, I'm bored. It's because the level of stimulation is not what is accustomed to on the screen time. So we have to be able to manage that really well. At home, like I said, you may have screen time battle. Your child may try to find ways or feel like, do you love me? You don't love me because you don't want to give me screen time. I'm not happy, right? They'll use that love or to make me sad. They will try to love you and negotiate to have screen time. Yes. Yes. Right? And you may start to see that they will start to prefer screen time. So you may say, well, okay, I'm going to start to do some outside activities. Do you want to? No. It becomes a no, no, no to anything else except screen time. And so it's creating that balance. So even when they say no, they don't want to, I would want to encourage you to still try to get them out as much as possible. The more that you try to pull them out, eventually, even if it's a short period of time, it will shift from it. I always say no now, they'll get mad and upset, but that structure is what going to help them in the long term. Right? So you'll get I hate you, you don't love me. But sticking to that. So a part of it is also working out in terms of how do you feel as a parent in terms of hearing these things, right? That it's not really a reflection of your parenting skill or that they don't love you. It's really and truly just how they're expressing at that particular moment. And so for us, it's telling yourself and reminding yourself, I'm a good mom, I'm doing the best that I can. This is what needs to happen because we will also experience the feelings of guilt. You know, we'll hear these things and that will hurt us. And so sometimes we give them the screen because that makes them feel good and then we feel good as parents. Mm-hmm. For now, we have to take the negative feeling that we have about it to know that in the long term it will pay off. You know, I always hear people to say, my parents used to do me this, and this, but now I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. The same thing will happen to us as well. They will appreciate it in the long term, right? So we'll just have to deal with that discomfort for a while. Impulsive shopping. So if you have a team, they have access to your card. If you save your card on your gadgets, you may just start to, where is this coming from? You know, I had a parent where her 5-year-old knew that she had her card on the phone and he was just buying games. Right? So impulsive shopping becomes a thing. They may want new apps, new games, and the higher level like you go. Right? Exactly. So you have to be able to know in terms of this could be a thing and how to be able to manage that. So if they have their own device, that's better in terms of they don't have all of it. Some children are smart, they will nag you. So it's also being mindful, checking your financials and see what games are popping up. You know, and having that conversation as well in terms of it does not automatically, because children feel like their parents are rich. You have money, right? You're working. So is to be able to be a lookout for that as well. Behavioral issues, so you may have more tantrums, but now that school is out, right, they may want to be in front of that screen. So now it's really being aware of and planning. So I've been looking at what's on came on. Mm-hmm. And there are lists of family activities and stuff that you can do that doesn't require only screen time to be able to help to create that balance in terms of how do you schedule other things or the things that they're interested in, you can use that. For example, if they like animals, there are a lot of to go to the iguana center. There's so many different things that you could try to use, things that they already like on the gadget and translate it into the real world. So let's go and explore. Remember what Dora said? Remember whatever it is that they're watching to try and investigate on their own as well to try to help mitigate that, right? They may have difficulty transitioning, so we may say 4 more minutes, and then we're gonna do something else. So we're giving them forewarning, and still when that 4 minutes is up, it's like, no, 4 minutes, right? So they may have difficulty transitioning, they may not want to eat because they're not hungry, they're stimulated, they're excited, they may just want something to drink and that's it, right? So these are some of the challenges that it brings, but there are also benefits. And it's a benefit when we utilize it as a tool.
Yes.
Right? Dr. Edwards started off by showing the generation of how technology has come and we utilize tools. And it was a tool. I remember growing up on TV, right?
Yeah.
And so how do we create that gap between the technology, because we can't run from it, but also creating a space where they could still go through their developmental stages progressively in a more healthier way. So by using it as a tool, we could also improve the quality of life, right? So everything now is digital. Your watch and all at this point is digital, right? So we have to be able to help them to create that space of utilizing it, but also not having the gadget run them. So we don't become the tool. We want to keep the gadget as the tool. Assist in learning, problem solving, creativity. They also improve visual spatial skills and increase visual memory, right? But we also want to translate that because we want these good qualities. We want that their visual memory to improve, but how does that translate for them in the real world? And so at school, they are using educational programs, high quality programs to enhance math, science, and reading, right? There are some books that have from pre-kinder science activities that you can utilize that are basic things of adding different colors together. There are so many, so you could use that to help them learn in digital. So for example, what's the app name? Hannah? There's an app that has science-based stuff, right? And they have from pre-K onwards. And you could watch how they make it, right? So sometimes they enjoy activities where they're watching the person do the experiment. And then you could do that at home. Let's try this. So then you're bridging what you're seeing on TV, the tablet, the games, etc. But they're actually doing it in real life. Right? So that we're creating that space between technology and what's happening, and they're also creating it. So again, they have that tangible component. They're actually practicing what they're learning, and it doesn't feel as overwhelming. And I think that's why it works really well at school because we're using it as a tool philosophy, and so they still have to do other work with it, right? Because they're good with technology, it also helps with research. They could find things really quick. Those are good things that we want to be able to encourage. We also want to be able to explain to them how to use the internet, how to identify if a source is healthy or not, and why it's not true, right? So even from a young age, we can still explain that to them. Like, this is the reason why I don't want you on this site. So a lot of times we like to give instructions, but we don't tend to explain why. And I think that's very important for children, regardless of their age, is to have an understanding of why. Or else they'll create their own reason as to why. They may be even more intrigued because you're telling me no, but I don't know why. So I'm going to try to figure out for myself. Right? The digital literacy. We are in a tech-driven world. Whenever you're looking at job applications now, they're going to say you need to be good at Microsoft, PowerPoint, Canva. There's so many different things now that you have to be able to utilize as part of your professional world that we want them to be able to utilize that as well. So again, we want to encourage them to use it, but with guidance, with supervision, with education. So you're taking them through that process. We want interactive learning, so Google Classrooms, hold their attention, so it does have a lot of benefit. It also encourages collaboration. So when you have work assignments, you could be at your house, I could be at my house, but we could still engage, right? And use different platforms that we could do it outside of classroom settings. So at home, it's a benefit because, to be honest, it keeps the child busy. That's the truth, right? But by keeping them busy, we want to have them to have educational materials to expand their curiosity. It also helps with cultural awareness. They learn different cultures. First, I was just exposed to Spanish growing up. Now it's different languages that they're exposed to at a really earlier age, so they have a better appreciation for different language and not just for the one that they grew up in. It also helps in terms of perspective because we're learning from different people, different experiences. We have a different viewpoint in terms of how to be able to engage. So it helps developing that global mindset. It's not just what I'm exposed to here, it transcends across. It also builds a sense of autonomy, right? So because they know how to maneuver the devices, it's like, I can do this. Wait, mommy, I will show you how. And sometimes they want tools on how to use gadgets. And I think utilizing that as well could help, again, with that attachment, with engagement in terms of how do we allow them, but we're also a part of that process as well. It could also help with managing behavior. So these are recent pictures here. So my son and my niece travel, and so without me, they came just with their aunt. So it helped on the plane, right? It helped them to keep so there is benefit to it, but we don't want them to be the sole thing. We don't want the gadgets to raise them. We don't want the gadgets to come to occupy their time all the time, but their time when it's very useful, right? And the reason why I'm explaining this is I had a lot of guilt in the beginning, like, he's not 5 years old. I don't want him to be hooked on it. I want him to be able to engage, right? And so what I also realized is that because I've been intentional about the use of technology, is there are times you put it on and just play with other things, run around, and all of those things. I'm like, hey, I could read a little, right? And that's what we want, that they could utilize the devices, but they don't have to be stuck on the device. And so when we are part of that process, when we're deliberate about that process, they don't have to be hooked on the gadgets, right? It also helps with creativity and learning. So I've been putting in here and there, bridging the gap, right? It's not a right or wrong. It's about everything is in moderation, right? For my child growing up, always heard, it's not about whether it's right or wrong. It's too much of anything, it's not good for you. And that same thing applies in terms of the digital component. We know that it could impact the brain negatively if we have that excessive use. We want to have the connection. Connection drives everything. If we have connection, that helps that we utilize the gadget for what it is as a tool rather than using it as an escape, rather than using it as a way to help parent your child. You want to have control to be able to say, this is how we will use gadgets in our home. There will be times when we don't use devices and we'll use interactive stuff. Earlier, the better. If you have children that are a lot older and you're saying, well, kind of missed that part. We're already here now. What do I do? Is prepare yourself. If you need support in terms of that transition, in terms of how do I reduce screen time and the backlash that comes with that, here is a space to get that, in terms of I will deal with it. The discomfort comes with us in terms of feeling like we're a bad parent, feeling like I'm not doing enough, or I feel that my child is so far gone that I want help. I just don't know how. What would that look like? And so it's not a lot of cause. It may take some time, And it's supporting your child and supporting yourself as well, because it really becomes difficult when you feel like we did something wrong, right? And so it's utilizing that we could find activities there. The things that they like, try to be aware of that and see how can that be translated within the real world as best as possible. And then there are times where even if it's not something that you can translate, it's this is the time we're gonna pop off where there's no budgets, right? And be firm with it. Even with I hate you, I don't like it. No, the cries, the tantrums, the meltdown, eventually that will start to reduce if you remain consistent, right? And because it's summer, I want to encourage you to be as consistent as possible, but also be graceful with yourself as possible, right? In terms of trying to create that balance, whatever work life schedule that you try to have, try to know that there may be times where the screen may use a little bit more, but then you want to know when you do have that opportunity is to reduce that screen time when you right? Because we don't live in an ideal world, unfortunately. So we have to make do with what we have, and that means that there may be time where instead of 1 hour per day, it's like 2 hours per day. But then when it's that 2 hours, you want to be a part of that process or checking in terms of what is it that they're engaged in. Because we don't want to have challenges in terms of their attention, their focus, their decision making. We don't want that their dorsal striatum to be so activated that they develop an addictive behavior, right? So that is where I want to leave you guys with. If there is any questions, feel free. Any comment, your own personal experience. This is what I'm talking about.
I like to comment and share part what you mentioned with their behavior at school. As a school teacher, I've seen that a lot in my class with the students I deal with. And it's kind of hard to balance because they come from home with their own energy, and when you come in the classroom with them, you have to try to match up with that kind of energy. And also as a classroom teacher, it's rough to tired. Yeah. It's very, but you want the frustration to overcome you because then students don't feel that, so you have to try to bridge the gap and balance it as well. Yeah. I have my work cut out too. Yeah. So at school, it's dealing with the teens, and at home, it's dealing with my popular. So, but I like the PowerPoint where you had on the technology, using technology in the classroom. My class, my students, they like their phone, but at school, we don't allow phone. So what do I do to help them use the technology in the classroom? Some of them were shy in presenting in person, so I have them doing a pre-recorded video presentation, and we play it on the PowerPoint projector, and they get amazed by that. Oh, I'm watching myself on the computer, so just going to know, as the village where I teach is very small, so technology is not overgrown there yet. So I still have it good. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing. It's nice to hear the parent, professional, parent, and teacher, to hear the different perspectives is so important because we get so tunnel vision sometimes in our own area. So that's so good to hear. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts?
I can relate to everything that has been said. I have an 11-year-old boy who believes that he's becoming 25.
Yeah.
And so I've had a very rough past week actually dealing with quite a lot of these issues. The biggest mistake that we made as parents was buying a PS5 about 3 years ago for him, and what that turned into was an absolute catastrophe. We discovered quite a lot of really disturbing things recently that he's been doing, interacting with other people from around the world. Me being, I'm tech savvy, but not as tech savvy as probably he is. Times are changing. I'm used to all the gadgets we saw at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
And it took myself and his father about 9 hours straight on Wednesday night, trying to figure out how to put parental controls in place to stop all of this. And we ended up having to delete his entire account, wipe the entire thing, and set it all up again under a child account. So the mistake that we made was assuming that every account was going to be able to be controlled. And he was operating under an adult profile for quite some time.
Yes.
And we came upon very disturbing messages, and cursing started. I mean, disgusting language. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a really big eye-opening experience. Thankfully, he's not a child that will kick and scream and cry. He does have that level of understanding to know that you're in deep trouble and this is the consequence. And I'm okay with you just, you know, taking care of this problem, mom, and I'm not going to kick and scream because I'm in trouble. So I'm glad that he has that level of understanding. But I mean, I am still shocked at the things that I witnessed. I mean, it's unreal. I mean, he had a 3-year friendship with a boy that we thought was 11, and he was actually 17. And very disturbing things. I mean, suicidal things, sexual things, inappropriate things. I mean, I had never seen anything like that before. I mean, you see these things on TV and all this kind of stuff, but it was really an eye-opening experience. And so we exposed him to technology quite young, first mistake. And so he has a severe addiction to tech. So when he is not able to have that screen to play, it's the iPad or the laptop. Thankfully, we have not given him a phone or anything like that just yet. So we're going to keep that the way that is, hopefully for as long as possible. But no, it's real. He's been diagnosed with ADHD as well. And so we have to navigate, dealing with the issues that come with that, as well as, screen time. So parental controls on now, everything is controlled. Permission for everything. It's even on a timer. When that time is up, it starts at a certain time for the summer, ends at a certain time, and that's it. It shuts down. There's nothing else you can do on it. He was playing Fortnite for 3 years, and unbeknownst to us, that is absolutely one of the most dangerous games that you can allow a child that age to play. I'm just going to tell everybody that here right now. Take my advice.
Yeah.
Minecraft is there too. It's not as bad, but Fortnite is absolutely dangerous for any child of that age group. So from personal experience, everything that has been said here, it's absolutely true. It's something that you will witness people that have children that are younger than him, but he's becoming a teenager, and then you have the hormones and all that kind of stuff kicking in. So thank you guys very much. I'm still trying to navigate how to try to parent him being an only child as well, because that's also an issue. He doesn't have any other type of interaction with other children his age unless I expose him, take him out into some of the things that we suggested and that kind of stuff. But otherwise he's bored, he doesn't have that enchantment that comes with, the screen time. So being a parent that works about 12, 13 hours a day, I don't have a lot of time to do other things with him. So that's a challenge for me. It's trying to find that kind of balance in terms of parenting a child this way, and trying to make that time to take him out of the house, do things with him, interact with him, because when you don't have that, then they're going to want more of you.
Yeah.
So that's my dilemma, really, how to make that time to, get him away from the devices. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing, being so vulnerable. It sounds like you're managing things very well already, so I think you should tap yourself on the back. I know it all probably came as a real shock, but you have a handle on it. You have obviously more information in your arsenal now. In the next 30 minutes, we will go through some practical pieces and fill you up with some more confidence, but we do individual parent coaching here too. So don't feel like if I don't get everything I need from my individual situation, because you have an 11-year-old, different things are happening in your home to what everybody else might be experiencing. We can meet with people on an individual level too and figure out and take you through step by step. And I'm going to do a little bit of that today in about 30 minutes.
and we'll see how we go. But thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else have any thoughts before I move?
I want to say that, I have a 7-year-old and a 14-year-old that are living in our home now
Yeah.
because their mom died in October. Before that, she was very sick, so the kids were like on their devices all night. And then sometimes they wouldn't go to school the next day. The grandmother was there, but she really didn't interfere with what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so at least we've got the devices, they're shut down at a certain time of night and stuff, but they just want to be on them all the time.
Yeah.
And the 7-year-old,
Yeah.
she's just so active and moving around all the time. The only time she's still is when she's in front of her computer. And so that's what we do. We want quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the 14-year-old, he has ADHD too, and he's pretty compliant, but he's like, but everything else, I don't want to do such and such. It's boring, and yeah. So
Yeah.
the parental control, I need to get.
Yeah,
handle
it's,
how to
you can
do that.
figure it out it takes time, but
Yeah. Get a program that you paid for.
I just know, the device itself has control. It's just, I had no idea how to use it. I had to use the internet, and it took us eight straight hours to figure out what to do to control this situation. Because if you leave them alone, I can tell you that you will end up with a different child. Yeah, so mine was headed in that direction, and we just shut it down. I mean, no matter how bad it hurt him.
Yeah.
It's for his own good.
Because it really isn't hurting, it's helping them. And I'm gonna share a little bit about parental control. I will take you through, obviously, I don't have 9 hours to go through it, but I will give you information. You at least have things to go with. You had something to share?
So since I'm in year one, going from high school, because I have 4 boys, then this is their father restricted to be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my oldest is restricted as well. So yeah, those things about fortnight, some of that is all the reduction news. And I can figure it out stuff like that to do values. Still be fine, still the baby. So now it affects him his life now as an adult 20. So yeah, social behavior, as you discussed earlier, I see it. And yeah, it's to work with him. So before like parents, smooth parents. Yeah. So I was like one of the worst members, you know. Stuff like that. So working with everyone now, you know, love folks. That's where I'm really at because I want to get hope in the house. She's clean to me. So that's the one time that she had. Yeah. But other than that, I was just trying to say, hey, let's do something. So we should play the toy. She's got a thing with toys now. Interact. Children. But yeah, like, seeing what happened to my first one. Yeah. But we try to keep on everybody's. That's where we come out. Yeah.
So thank you, ladies, for sharing. And I'm so glad to hear you sharing and getting into it, because we are going to go through a few things, get more chatty, practice a few things. What we're going to go through is what I call the steps from digital divide to digital divide, because we're connected, but we're disconnected in terms of that parent-child relationship, which Dr. Edwards talked about, that attachment and play being essential and supportive towards. We are a big part of the social skills. So even with the only child, we can support that. And I'll take you through a few things there too. We're going to review what you have in front of you. I'm going to help you use it, but if you want more information, that's what I'm here for and my team are here for. And then we're going to practice some of these parenting strategies. Yeah. But your best parenting strategy, honestly, is your relationship with your child. Ms. Lopez said it about in terms of, I'm trying to remember exactly what you said, but being interested in their interests, entering their world, that is number one. That's the best parenting tool you have, because a child is more likely to cooperate with you and be on your team, so to speak,
because that parent-child relationship is strong. You show interest in them, you care about them, you're having quality time with them, they are going to cooperate with you, whatever that might mean, and outside of screen use, right? Step one, and I'm gonna take it in baby steps because it's important to take it in steps because like you were completely overwhelmed this week with something, right? And it can be incredibly overwhelming as parents. We are often exposed to information like what was shared earlier in terms of they should only get this amount of time. And Miss Lopez did so well, like she wanted to get to 5 years old, but she got to 3. That's extraordinary, right? A lot of parents look at that and just go, well, I've already like opened the floodgates. This is impossible to come back, but it isn't. You can do it in little wins and steps. Step one is really taking a look at what does it look like really now. We might think we know, but really take a hard look. And before you even implement anything, what does it really look like? What do the weekdays look like? What do the weekends look like? And actually start with yourself. So I think both shared about the influence that we have. It's so important, right? We have the influence for good, the good, bad, and the ugly. They see us, they mirror us, and that means when we're on the phone and they're coming to us and we're like, just one more minute, and we're sending a message that this, whatever's going on, if it's Instagram or it's work, they don't know if we're not telling them that this is more important than that. And so they think, oh, I should be on this. This is something valuable. We send those kind of messages, right? We don't mean to. We aren't saying this is more important than you, baby. I need to stay on here. But that's what's being inferred, and that's what they receive. So we have to be a lot more mindful and present because once we get sucked in, we see it as adults. We can get sucked in. I get sucked in. Passively going on. They call it, I learned this term just yesterday, actually, revenge sleep. Or I think that's the term where you spend all day as a parent, you're at work, you give your all to your clients, your customers, your colleagues, whoever. You go home, you give your all to your children, and then they're in bed. Time for me. We end up on here or watching TV, watching 5 episodes of Bridgerton, which I may have done, right? And we're like, I'm going to stay on here. And so it's very passive. We're sucked in. That same dopamine hit that was shared about, that works on us too. They design these things to suck us in. Silicon Valley, where all of these things are made, those parents do not give their children anything. And they use a lot of those analog things that Dr. Edwards shared because they know the dangers because they designed it to be effective. So being mindful, being aware, like, oh my God, I've just spent 30 minutes. And there's apps on there that can actually record your time. You can have things on your watch or on your phone to vibrate or alarm you that you've been on for so long to also prompt you to come off. So start with yourself. That's the biggest thing. And both Dr. Edwards and Ms. Lopez shared about doing it together if you're on the technology. If it's a game system, you've already brought it into the home, make sure it's in the living room. There are no headphones or headset in. You can hear everything. That's very important so that your supervision's there. So step one, really take a gander and an understanding of how many systems are in here. What do they have access to? What are the apps? What am I doing? What's my lifestyle kind of like with gadgets and screen time? So that you can really start to create a plan. Because going 0 to 100 and just everything's out of here, maybe actually take a look at what does it look like? What are the good things? What are the benefits you're using at home to still maintain those, but curtail some of those negatives that are taking place? So start with really getting an understanding of what's going on. Step 2 is really, what's your goal? What do you really want it to look like, right? We talk about technology being used as a tool. How do we really get it to a point where it feels like a tool and it isn't in control of us and our family and our children? So that's very important. What is the goal? And it might be a new lifestyle shift for you and your family. And that takes time and that's hard because that's change. But that's really important. Think about what you can realistically too commit to. Because in order, we talk about, being consistent, and no matter what, they'll come at you, don't take it personal and all those things, but it's really hard. And I can share a story of a parent, and I actually invited her to be here to share her story, but she couldn't come. But basically, for the last year, she's had no gadgets because it became such an issue. She had 3 children of different ages, between 2 to 12. And it became such a huge issue with all of them, and especially one of her children who was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. But because it was a problem for him, it was an even bigger problem for the siblings too, and a huge thing for her to manage. For the last year, she's had nothing. And it's interesting because part of me is like, oh, but we need technology now, and we need to stay in touch, and the laptop is good because homework gets done on it. But I wanted her to also share that even this extreme life's possible, because I think a lot of parents think that it's not. But I wanted her to share, but she's obviously not here, but it is possible to even, although you might have exposed loads, to get back to the basics and to something a bit more, maybe what we were used to. So think about that, kind of what is the long-term goal? Where would you like to realistically see your family using technology as a tool? Or maybe you're one of those that want to go, no, none of it ever, right? But it is a part of our life, right? Now, step 3, this is the biggest step because it's a lot of information gathering. I saw that Dr. Edwards shared the commonsensemedia.org website. That is a beautiful website. That is great as a resource for parents because you get to research things like Fortnite before you buy it. You get to discover, hey, this is for teens. These are the themes that children will be exposed to. So you get to decide, even if a game is a certain rating or a TV show is a certain rating, you get to decide, well, hold on, this rating looks like it's appropriate for my child's age, but these are the themes. This isn't aligned with my family values. So I'm not going to actually purchase this. I'm not bringing this into my home. So it's a great resource. They have things categorized by the type of thing it is, the game, TV show, app, but also by age and by theme. So if there's certain themes you're not wanting your children to be exposed to, you can look it all up through Common Sense Media. An amazing website. There's built-in parental controls you've learned, right? So right in the PlayStation, they're there, but then you have to figure out, oh, I have to now delete something, create a whole new thing. So they're there, but they take some time to learn. Your best friend with these is YouTube or Google. Again, using it as a tool that it's designed for. Look these things up, watch other parents teach you how to use it. But everything has something. So the Apple devices, iOS screen time, the Android, Google Family Link. I think some of these have a cost. I think the Family Link one has a cost now. It used to be free, but now I think it does. Windows devices, Microsoft Family Safety, and then all the different games will have them embedded under different names, or they might just be called the parental settings. Yeah. So anytime, if you are going to purchase a game system, you promise them, like if you get straight A's, you're going to get a new PlayStation for summer, that type of thing. Okay, you've done it, your word is your bond kind of thing, but you don't have to just chuck it and they figure it out. You go through Common Sense Media, go through YouTube, get prepared, gather your information. And a big message, I think Ms. Deshane said something about, how they'll manipulate us with our emotions and tell us what, how could you do this to me? You promised me a PlayStation, but this isn't really a PlayStation. All of these things are on there. You can develop a statement where you're just telling yourself, I'm not taking this personally, and letting them know, I actually do love you and I have a responsibility to keep you safe. And you can reiterate the same thing over and over because, yeah, they will come at you with that potentially. And you just staying firm and having that statement and knowing that, all of us here have shared, our own issues with it, staying firm in it will feel really good.
What's under the ball?
Yeah, so these ones, let me just move this out of the way. These are third-party ones. So you can go ahead and write all these down or take a photo, but these, some of which, I think most, if not all of those, do have some sort of cost incurred. But again, research them, don't just download one and go with it, because you might find a different one works better for you. My colleague said she likes Kids Locks. Another one of mine said she likes RPACT. So figure out what you prefer, and then go with that. But there's many of them. Yeah, it's okay to change the slide. I can come back to it. Again, so play. So a big part of step 3, if you're gathering information and getting prepared, is what the heck do I do with my child if they're not on the screen? If they always on the screen, right? If it's been a free-for-all, curtailing that back, that's going to be hard work. No one's going to sugarcoat that for you. But, UNICEF says children who play regularly with their parents are less likely to develop anxiety, depression, aggression, and sleep problems. So play is essential. And sometimes I think as adults, we think of play as this very exhausting, massive thing. It really doesn't have to. There was something Ms. Deshane said, I forget what it was, but I had noted down the play piece, using puppetry, using their favorite toy, they like Spider-Man, and pretending to be Spider-Man. Okay, we're going to go and brush our teeth now, and making it fun. Obviously, maybe not for an 11-year-old, but using playful language too, really helpful. We get a lot more from our children when we're more playful, and it's easier instead of us always being kind of, listen, let's go. We're not meant to have a manager subordinate sort of relationship. It's meant to be loving and playful and nurturing, and they're meant to enjoy childhood too, and we're meant to, and we enjoy it a lot more when we are a little bit more playful with them. So giving instructions, making it playful. I went to Joanna Clark Primary for their end of year presentation, and it was full house. The hall was full of parents. It was a beautiful sight. Because sometimes I go to PTA and deliver a presentation. Sometimes the turnout's not great, but it was packed and it was beautiful. And the children were there too, some of them. And so I was talking a little bit about what I'm talking about now. And I said to the audience, I said, what do you love to do with your children? But it was the children that put up their hands, because it's probably a little embarrassing for parents to share in a big auditorium like that. And the children were saying, I love to do the chores. So my question was, what do you like to do instead of screen time, or when you're not on screens? What do you like to do with your mom, your dad? I like to do the laundry. I like to bake. I like to help her cook. I like to set the table. It was all chores. It was all chores. And I was like, do I need to send my child to join the Clark Primary? But it was fascinating to hear, and it was really useful for the parents to hear that actually that's where children are actually having the best time with their parents. And that's where we do spend a lot of our time as parents. And so it's like, yeah, I'm already doing chores, and then I have my work and I have all these things, and now you're telling me I have to go play with my child. So actually build it in. We actually love it already. So making it a bit even more playful. And I had a parent say to me recently, but they don't even know how to sweep and mop. How can I get them doing that? And it's like, yeah, they don't. And they will not learn if they don't get the practice. So let them sweep and probably make a bigger mess of things, but it's still learning. And they're not going to always be bad. They're going to eventually get better. And you can teach them, like, not like this, sweepy, it's like this, right? Try again. And they'll fail, and they'll keep failing, but that practice is really important. And you can be playful, and you can even give them points, which is game-like, right? Yeah, chores, make it fun, and then let them try, and then you come over and you do a proper clean, sure. But that's really helpful, help them learn how to fold, to cook. And it can be age appropriate too, if they're really little. Maybe all they can do is fold the napkins for dinner or something like that, right? But little things are valuable too. And letting them know, wow, great job, you really helped mommy. How does it feel? Those kinds of questions, like how does it feel to help mommy, to help daddy set the table to prepare dinner? They're making that connection of, yeah, how does it feel? And say, yeah, I feel good, I feel proud. These sort of emotions being tied to things that are pro-social, really valuable. Don't limit them, exactly. I'm gonna go across that just because it's a little bit long and we don't have loads of time, but I want you to use the papers that are in front of you, and I'll put on a timer for just a minute, but I want you to feel that the answers are already within you. You don't need necessarily loads of professionals in your corner, we're helpful, but you know the answers already. So think of the children in your life and what they're already interested in, and when you see them light up, when they're not on their phone or their gadgets, what are they doing, right? What do they like to talk to you about? So start there, and I want you to just go word association, word free, just write down a list of things you think they would enjoy that's not anything to do with the screen, and go. And go. Second. I can already see such long lists. Right, that was a minute. So I want you to pause, take a look at what's there. And maybe you can tick, underline, or circle top two that you feel maybe something that you can do on a daily basis, if anything. Or maybe there's just weekend specific tasks or activities. But some things are going to probably be easier for a weekend than an everyday thing. But we can fit things into our lifestyle. It's just, again, getting prepared, thinking of how can my new lifestyle or my new routine look. So when they're already on their gadgets, maybe one of the rules is no gadgets at the dinner table. Okay, so what am I supplementing? So it's conversation, that's practice, right? And even that can be time to practice of, when I drop you off and you see Miss Bodden in the morning, I want you to look at her in the eye and I want you to say, good morning, Miss Bodden. Let's practice that now. Great time. Or even in driving in the car. Yeah. Uno, dominoes, like card games at the dinner table. Maybe that's something that you feel you can handle and something you would want to introduce or replace or temporarily replace the screen if that's something that's common. So it's thinking about those things. And there's another list. So reading, you mentioned your daughter loves to read, having little reading corners. So again, kind of going back to step one and what does screen time look like? Think about what your home looks like. Are there interesting spaces for play and for books and things like that? Listening to podcasts and audiobooks are really great because we're using technology as a tool where, like you said, Cocomelon is just intense and everything's being fed to a child. There's nothing to think about. I wonder what little Johnny looks like. I wonder what outside looks like. This is where imagination can really go wild. like I said, helping with household chores. There's puzzles, board games, and some of these we can just get from friends. We don't have to go and buy brand new. I went to Book Nook just yesterday because we have a camp starting next week, so I wanted to get prizes. And some of the prices weren't awful. Like there were little card games for like $8, $9. Uno was there, Domino's was there. But you don't have to buy it brand new.
A lot of those games are really cheap and like they, Humane Society.
Yeah, I was gonna say, books and board games and different things are at Humane Society, and then there's other little charity shops that will sell as well, and you usually find really great stuff for next to nothing. But yeah, asking friends, cousins, whoever, are you done with that? Like think of your child who's the cousin or whoever who's older. Hey, do you have board games and things like that? That might be age appropriate now for my child. Can I get some of that? I'm constantly begging. Don't be too proud to beg. Outdoor play, just let them go outside, make sure the fence is locked in and that you can supervise, you don't have to be running around with them, but that's fun too. And you get some endorphins from that sense of exercise. Washable paint in the bath, that's great. And then wash away the mess. Chalk on the pavement, letting children teach you a new skill. They love that. And they bond with you, the relationship strengthens. If they love basketball and you're not sporty, teach them how to play basketball. I don't know the rules, I don't know how to do this, how do you do the footwork? They will love it. And they will really take time and they will teach you. Even if you feel like, oh, this is gonna be embarrassing or awkward, them seeing that you're comfortable to do that will also open the gates for them. Yeah, to want to learn as well. And well, mommy, okay, to embarrass herself, well, maybe I can too. Playing sports, play with them. Use recyclable stuff. Kids will make forks out of cardboard boxes. And for a while, my living room was the tables and blankets, and they were loving it, going under and in there with their books and their toys, and the play was beautiful to see. Fishing, really fun to do, or relaxing, calming, and just sitting there quiet. You can have a little chat with them too about life and share appropriate stories. And again, those social skills, all of that really valuable stuff. I don't know if anyone saw this, but this came out just a couple of weeks ago. The US Surgeon General calls for cigarette-style warnings on social media platforms. So we see those big stickers that say this will eventually kill you in cigarettes. That's basically what he's saying he wants for social media. And those stickers are actually really effective. So I can't remember the year when they started to introduce them, but before that, sales were like 80%, something ridiculous, and they're down half or less because those stickers were implemented. And so it's just making sure that the social media user, whether adult or child, they understand that this has mental health harms. And when we see something like that enough, the person who used to smoke and saw that sticker enough, is this worth my life ending? A child or adult seeing that might think, is this really worth my mental health? Or maybe I'll just set a timer for just 10 minutes today. And then eventually we might just stop using these things or stop holding them in such high regard too. So it's really important that, the powers that be are starting to have these conversations. That's really important. So let's look through your packets. You have in it, let me pull one out myself. You should have several things. And feel free to get comfortable with these things too, but you have at least one little, this is a screen-free zone. Literally put this where you want to have a screen-free zone. So if dinner time is going to be no screen, if the bedroom, no screens, put this in there. Yeah, it's a visual reminder, children, very visual for you too, because if you say eating area is screen-free, this is a rule for you too. Yeah, family rules means everybody's following, right? Really helpful. You want to take a photocopy of it. You can also Google, like we made this in-house, but you can just Google, if you go on Canva, stuff like this is ready-made, print it off and put it where you want it. At FRC, we recommend 3 places are great for screen-free zone. Bedroom. no TV. I don't think allow your phone in there. My colleague even said change, what was it? Instead of because people use the alarm on their phone. So she said, get an analog and set that so that you're not tempted to bring your phone in there too. But you can even lock away things, you know, if you're worried about the child getting their phone in there, that's a rule. You hand your phone in to me before bed and you lock that away. You can't, right? So that's something to use. Just some tips and resources, a little bit about what we already talked about today, and some resources around the back, some of which are the parental controls. So handy little thing. This one is best for your older child, your tween or teen even. It's basically a family media contract, and it's still editable to a certain degree, so you get to decide how long they're spending on certain things per day, per week. Safety wise, things about where not to go, you know, they need parents' permission. But again, you can use this just as a guide if you want to create and type up your own or Google what else is out there. There's some great ones. And this, I'm pretty sure my colleague found this on Canva. And we didn't have to edit it, right? We just stuck our logo on there. So you can find things that are editable, and then you create to your own liking. Household media rules. So we have one that has somewhat editable. Again, you can decide on the times or the duration of things. But this is a pretty good standard set of rules if you want to just go with this. But on the back, create your own. Maybe this will just inspire you to what you really want to at least start with. And you get a nice little fine point marker in there. You can wipe it off with some wet wipes and write a new set of rules when you're ready for new rules, because eventually these rules will become routine and you don't really need to implement them anymore. You can create a new set of rules. Yeah. Or maybe it'll just become a way of life. You don't really essentially need rules. It'll just be unspoken. Or it be, you know, remember our rule about this, right? You might say that once in a while. But when you're implementing rules, you really need rewards, need consequences, whether positive or negative. Rewards are great. How do you track that your child is abiding by these rules, right? You can even, to some degree, transfer those rules onto a reward chart and start ticking off each day. And maybe each day represents a point, you know? And so at the end of the week, they have 7 points. If they have a certain amount of points for that day or for that week, they get a nice reward. And talk to them about what these rewards might be, and do not break the bank. That's not effective for anybody, and you're not going to stick to it if it's extremely expensive anyways. So, you know, rewards for each day can be a high five and a hug, a sticker, you know, it can be a trip to the beach on the weekend. It can be them earning a special treat. Try to not tie food too much to rewards, but some parents find that effective. I had a parent was like, I'm going to give her money. Like, well, you don't want to also tie unhealthy thoughts around money and food to these things. So it's best to make it as non-tangible as possible. But again, we can support you in this. And then the back, completely up to you if you want to create absolutely your own goals there. And there should be consequences attached to it too, right? So if a child isn't following that they should hand their phone into you by 7 p.m., like before bedtime, 30 minutes before bedtime, for example, what's the consequence attached? Right? So get comfortable with what's in that packet. And you can start to write these things out. Talk to them and introduce these things at a neutral time. Don't go home and out of aggravation, take the tablet out of their hand, pull that internet out. Talk to them during a neutral period. I went to this forum today, baby, and I have some ideas, and this is what I'm looking at. Things are going to look a little different around here, okay? And let's talk about what that's going to look like.
So it should be a conversation and it can be collaborative, especially if they're at a certain age. You know, your 11-year-old can certainly be a part of the conversation because they are digital citizens, just like we are. So having them a part of it, getting curious about what they already know, what they're already exposed to, what they're already doing, really helpful. And say, great, I'm so glad to hear these things. You already know a lot of this stuff. You already aren't a big fan of Instagram. That's great to hear because this is actually part of the rule that I want to, for example. So staying curious will help you. Don't assume that your child, you know, is some deviant that loves to do X, Y, Z. You'll actually be really surprised and impressed at some of the thoughtful answers that they may have about their own thoughts about.
Yeah, when it comes to having them involved, with the making the rules, so have them involved making the rules.
Yeah.
Imposing the rules.
Exactly.
Once they are a part of making the rules and the
Yeah.
consequence, they will own up to it.
Exactly.
But that's something,
Exactly.
as a teacher, that's what I do. I have them come up with the rules. And say,
Yeah.
okay, if you do this and you break it, what will happen? So
Yeah.
when they do, they already know.
They already know. Because they were a part of that decision making.
Exactly. So they will.
Absolutely. And you can use this. You can say, here are some ideas. What do you think? You like any of these? And they can tick it off. And then you create your own. Right?
They will
Absolutely.
feel more a part of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I have the power to make this for me.
Yes. Yes, we call it the buy-in. If children don't have the buy-in, this is mom's rule.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
dad's stuff. This isn't mine. But yeah, if they're a part of that decision making, you're gonna have a lot better experience with them, definitely. But let's say in that moment, you know, the rules are new. How do you really get them to get off the gadget to come to the dinner table without bringing it with them? We call it effective direction. So we can certainly give children instructions, but we can make them a lot more ineffective or effective, depending on us. And that's the only thing we truly control is us and our approach. We don't really have full control of our children and their decisions, right? So how are we talking to them? How are we telling them or asking them to do certain things, right? So if I'm in the kitchen yelling, all right, honey, time for dinner, get it, you know, turn off the TV, get in there, oh, come on, they're not, no, they're on their TV or their whatever, not listening, not because they can't, right? But what happens when they don't cooperate? We're frustrated. And then we go over there huffing and puffing, and what happens to that relationship? Absolutely, conflict and getting ruptured. So, but we do these all the time. I still to this day have to be like, oh yeah, you're calling from the other room. What do you expect's gonna happen? Yeah. We do it. It's human nature, right? What's easiest? It's easier for me to just yell, but going over it's just some muscle memory, right? So I was gonna have my colleague do it with me, but I just do it on Dr. Edwards if you don't mind. But it's really coming over. So say they're watching the TV, they're engrossed. You're just attention grabber, little hand on the shoulder, something like that. Get the eye. Okay, I need you to pause for a minute. Look at mommy. Right, get the eye contact. Eye contact so important and a great social skill that they need. State the direction simply, right? If you give, okay, I need you to go brush your, I need you to get off this, go brush your teeth, go put on your pajamas, da 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 da. Too much, even for the oldest. So you just want to say, sweetie, in 5 minutes, I need you to come off your screen. We're going to do. Okay, what did mommy just say? That's a really useful thing because then you know whether or not they've heard you. And they are also further processing your direction. So that's really helpful. If they say the complete something crazy or they try to manipulate you, you say, oh, you said I can have 5 more minutes and then I can do this. No. Try again what I want me to say. So be patient with them. Give them, so say you're telling them to come now, you haven't given a 5-minute warning. Still give them a few seconds. We say 10 seconds because then you can deep breathe and count to 10 and get calm. And then once they do, right, don't just take it for granted and go, oh, yeah, that's right, be better. Say, well, I'm so impressed, look at you. must feel so good to follow the rules and follow what mommy's saying. High five. And you can make a really big deal out of it too, and eventually start to get them to intrinsically stay motivated. So things like, must feel good to make good choices. How do you feel? You know, you've been following the rules for the past couple of weeks. How has it been? You feel proud of yourself. So again, those positive associations. That's a little bit about what it would look like. Get the eye contact, time to turn off. What did mommy just say? What did daddy just say? Okay, well done. Turning off the tablet, coming to dinner, hope you feel proud, right? Big deal. Now, what if they don't, right? So time to turn your phone in, it's bedtime. You don't get my phone? Not today. What are you gonna do with that, right? So it can still be the same thing where you're getting that eye contact. Okay, so it's 7:30. Remember the agreement was at 7:30, give me the phone and get some 30 minutes to wind down before bed. No, loads of attitude. Give them some time to see if they can self-regulate and correct. If you can coach them through to make the best decision, great. But if not, and you want to nip it in the bud, you just let them know, hey, you're not abiding by the rules. So this takes self-regulation on our part. You're not abiding by the rules. I'm taking the phone and actually, because that's a part of the rule, you want to still implement some sort of consequence. You're actually lost the privilege of using it tomorrow morning, right? Not for the whole month. So some parents get mad and they're like, yeah, you don't have your laptop this whole month because of this foolishness. What happens is math teacher needs the homework and the homework is on the laptop and now you're like, oh, bring the laptop out. But only for that, you know, so little taste like that, ripping that Band-Aid off hurts more sometimes than a bigger consequence. So look, you're not getting it tomorrow morning, and then you're going to give me, you're going to show another opportunity to earn my trust, right? So little tastes of that are good. A really simple technique, very effective, the when then. So when you finish your homework, then you'll have your 30 minutes free, right? Sequence, it teaches children priorities, responsibility in a very simple way, especially if they're coming to you whining. But mommy, it's time for my phone. Yeah, well, homework's still not done, right? So once the homework's done, then you get your 30 minutes for the day. But remember, bedtime is at 7:30. So children are starting to learn time management and responsibility too. Because they want what they want, but these are also the rules, right? So they have to figure it out. When you've completed your chores, then we're going to go watch the movie together. That also sends a message of we're doing these things together, right? Technology is a tool. It's entertaining us and we're doing it together. So step 4 is really just to gather all of that. So all of that was the step 3, the information gathering, the strategies. How do I make this work? How do I get prepared for it? Once you feel confident that you have a good plan and you're ready to say, okay, babes, let's talk about this. This is how it's going to look now. And, you know, what do you have to say about this? What would you like to see? Again, they're collaborative. They're a part of that conversation. Commit to it. Consistency definitely is key. And again, that's why I said in step 2, what do you live with? What do you really commit to? So even if you have long term of like, I'm just getting rid of all of this, then great. But maybe you want to have little wins. Yeah. What's my win this month? What can I commit to this month? And then maybe next month you're bringing down the time even more or whatever it might be. Yeah. So I've been still somewhat general because what works for each family will be different. I can't say, look, for you, do this. For you, do this. You have to be the one to figure that out for yourself. And again, your child is part of the conversation. So I still can't say, look, you do the exact things, but these are the helpful tools, yeah? This was a nice little thing too about the value of relationships. And so think of that use it as a tool to either foster your relationship with them, or when you're not there, how are you fostering your relationship with them? right? And not to be overwhelming, because you can do it while you're doing chores anyways. And then step 5 is just revisiting as needed. Having that conversation again. Maybe you weren't happy with the way you had the conversation, you want to try it again. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with apologizing and saying, you know what, I got that wrong. I'm not used to this. Let me try it again. I think we should try it this way, sweetheart. What do you think? There's nothing wrong with that. And they see, wow, mommy's willing to try different things and approach me in different ways. That teaches them, that models something really healthy for them too. And so I know I went over a lot, I know because we started a little late, but again, you want any more of this information, individualized support. That's what we're here for. Take your packets, review them, see if you need anything else. That's what we're here for. But yeah, I'll leave it there for today and just say thank you for being here. And please, please, please take some of the food with you. And all the best for everything as well. Thank you.